some noise for
Orange Juice in a Blunt.
Whoreson, the story of a ghetto pimp. I stared closely at the blond young man they called Ringo. Something about his name had rung a bell in the back of my mind, but because of my nervousness, I couldn't put my finger on it. "Don't worry about anything Ringo has to say, darling," she replied, patting my arm affectionately. "He's probably still carrying a grudge over the loss of Janet. You already know, don't you, darling, that Janet and Ringo were engaged to take the big jump?" She smiled brightly at everyone at the table, but I hadn't missed the bright glitter in her eyes as she told the old news. She watched for my reaction, but I was beginning to get on firm ground now. I was used to the sharp claws of malicious women. "Yes," I replied cheerfully. "Janet told me earlier that Mr. Ringo would be here. I have been aware of him, but I haven't had the opportunity to meet him until today." I glanced up at Janet and saw the relief in her eyes. After that, the conversation became more formal. They discussed the idea of having Janet and Ringo go on a 3-month tour of the West Coast after she completed her bookings in the East. I could tell from the look in Ringo's eye that he was all for the tour. He and Janet had the same agent, and the agent was all for the trip. It wasn't hard for my inexperienced mind to grasp what was behind the scheme. Ringo hadn't had a record in the top 100 in the past 2 years. With Janet drawing the crowd, they would be able to cash in on the rumors about their past romance, plus rebuild his image. Ringo was hungry. I watched his cold blue eyes search Janet's face. She kept her eyes away from him. She was up on what was going down. She glanced at me shyly. I shook my head, wanting her to know I didn't want her going for the deal at all. Martha caught my motion and smiled. "Mr. Jones, I believe you might have a surprise for a lot of people in this town." I grinned at her in return, staring into her eyes until she looked away. I wanted her to know that I was a man and not some woman's play toy. I decided to put all my marbles in the pot at once. When a man has dealt with women all his life, he has a feeling about them that is seldom wrong. I knew that many women were slow to make a decision, but if you backed them in a corner, they would accept it. I decided to put Janet in a corner. I really didn't have that much to lose. Either she went for it, or I started to pimp everything that wore a skirt in New York. "I don't think Janet will be able to accept that offer," I began, and waited until I was sure I had everyone's attention, "because we're getting married next month." Just like that, I laid it on the table. Everything was hanging out. Janet's mouth dropped open, and she looked like she was having trouble breathing. Martha was the first one to regain her composure. "Is that correct, Janet? Can I quote you on that?" Her questions were sharp and to the point. Janet nodded her head in agreement and continued to stare at me in utter shock. Martha jumped up and ran to the phone. The gray-headed agent ordered a round of drinks for everyone, while Ringo shot daggers across the table at me. I returned his stare. "Up your ass, Peckerwood," I said to myself coldly. This was one little black girl you gray boys wouldn't get a chance to play out of 1,000,000. When Martha returned, we had a few more drinks, then got ready to go. When Janet got up and came around the table, I took her arm. I began to steer towards the door. Before I could react, a flashbulb went off in my face. I jerked my head back, but I was too late. The damage had been done. I stared angrily after the girl with the camera. "What's wrong, Mr. Jones? A man as handsome as you are shouldn't mind someone taking your picture," Martha said lightly. "Besides, I want Janet's fans to see the wonderful specimen she's managed to latch onto." Outside the club, we shook hands again. Then I managed to get Janet away and into my car. We rode in silence for a few blocks. "Why did you do that, Whoreson?" she asked slowly. "Why? I don't know why you even bothered to ask me something like that, woman, unless you were interested in making that tour with that high-paid pimp," I replied, fighting for time to get my answers together. "You don't have to call Ringo any names, Whoreson, and it sure wasn't necessary for you to go and put your foot in your mouth like that," she replied. The anger was coming now. "If you didn't like the idea, why didn't you just tell your lily-white friends that I was lying?" If I could get her on the defensive, I reasoned, I had a good chance of winning more than I had bargained for. Even though I had mentioned marriage on the spur of the moment, I was by no means a fool. I knew marriage to Janet would put me on easy street for a long time. "First of all, Whoreson, I didn't want to make a fool out of you by denying it. If you had asked me about it, I would have probably agreed to marry you anyway. But this way, you make me feel as though you're playing on me." She glanced up at me, and her eyes were filled with tears. "Playing on you, hell," I replied sharply. "Was pretty Ringo playing on you when they tried to get you to go on that goddamn tour?" "I could have handled that myself," she explained softly. "Anyway, it's understandable. Ringo wanted to marry me, and still does, for that matter. Why shouldn't he want to go on a tour with me? He probably thinks it will help his chances out." "Marry you, my black ass. You black bitches kill me. Every time one of you gets a little bit of money and a white man looks at you, you really think he wants to marry you. Bullshit. All he wants to do is play you out of that cash." I reached over and pulled the car shade down so she could see herself in the little mirror on the back. "Look in that and tell me what you see. No, that's all right. I'll tell you what you'll see. A black woman. Not the most beautiful black woman in the world either, just a young, cute black girl. Now, not counting all the fine-ass white girls out there, let's talk about the fine-ass black ones." I stopped and caught my breath. Wherever Mr. Ringo sings at, you can bet money there's some pretty, not cute, but pretty, beautiful black girls in the audience listening. And some of them girls would jump out of a 10-story window just to be able to carry Mr. Ringo's shorts. Yet you don't find him taking any of them home to mama, do you? You bet your goddamn ass you don't," I stated, not giving her time to answer. I pulled up in front of my hotel and parked. "I want you to come upstairs for a minute. I got something I want to show you." Without waiting for her answer, I got out and walked towards the entrance. She followed meekly behind me. We remained silent until we got out of the elevator on the 4th floor and entered my apartment. "I don't see any difference, Whoreson, in you or Ringo. You say he wants to marry me because of my money, but I'm supposed to believe the only reason you want me is because of my just fair looks, as you put it." Sarcasm dripped from her words. "You may not know it," she continued, "but Ringo happens to be Jewish, so he knows all about being discriminated against. I happen to know he came from a poor background the same as I did." "You better damn well bet he did," I said harshly. "Let me tell you something, little mixed-up fool. When I was in prison, I learned something about white folks, and Jews in particular. Dig this first, baby," I said, waving her quiet. "Out of all the Ophes in prison, the only ones I wouldn't mess with were the Jews, baby. And you know why? Well, I'll tell you. A poor Jew catches damn near as much hell as a black man in this country, honey. You hear me? If he goes south, they might beat his goddamn ass if them hillbillies feel like it. You know what I mean? I stared at her close.